Would you trust a child to fix a system that your entire tech team failed to recover? Now ask yourself this, what if that child never even had a chance to go to school? While other 8-year-olds chased soccer balls and learned their multiplication tables, Ellie Moore sat on a worn bench in the corner of Lynx Core Systems' marble lobby, her legs too short to reach the floor, her eyes fixed on a weathered notebook filled with strange symbols and impossible blueprints. She wasn't supposed to be there. She never was. Her mother, Angela Moore, worked the graveyard shift as a janitor, mopping the same polished floors where billion-dollar ideas were whispered and dismissed by men in tailored suits. Every night, Angela clocked in with barely a glance from security Ellie, trailing silently behind like a shadow. Unnoticed, unimportant, except today. Today, everything changed. It started with a flicker, then a hiss, then darkness. At exactly 7:42 a.m., every screen, every security monitor, every server node in the west wing of Lynx Core went dead. No backup, no warning, just silence. The company's lead engineers flooded the ground floor like ants from a broken hive, eyes wild phones pressed to ears, voices sharp with panic. It's a full system breach, internal and external. Firewalls down, DNS unreachable. Who the hell ran diagnostics this week? The receptionist, once calm and robotic, slammed her headset to the desk. We're locked out. This isn't just a glitch. It's surgical. Ellie didn't move. She sat perfectly still, her arms wrapped around her backpack, as if it might vanish if she loosened her grip. She'd seen something like this once on a pirate tech channel. She wasn't supposed to watch the kind with simulated breach scenarios, deep dive kernel hacks, and scary words like root override. But this wasn't simulation. This was real. She opened her notebook, slowly, hands trembling with anticipation, not fear. Her pencil hovered. Her mind raced. From behind the front desk, the CTO barked, "Try rebooting the local servers manually." Someone responded, "Already did. No change. DNS still frozen. Possibly intentional code injection." A phrase jumped into Ellie's head like a lightning socket overflow loop, a strange, nerdy ghost from a tutorial she'd once seen by flashlight on the cracked laptop of her cousin Tyler. Her eyes narrowed. Ellie knew she shouldn't say anything. Rule number 1 of being invisible: don't speak, don't be seen. But her hand went up anyway. She stood, quietly, and whispered, "Did anyone check the overflow loop?" Every voice stopped. Every face turned. There was a pause thick as fog. One engineer snorted, "Jesus, who let the kid in here?" Another rolled his eyes. "Security. We've got a breach and a babysitter." But someone else, someone different noticed. A young man stood near the back of the room, barely older than a college student, with a badge that read, "Noah Green." His eyes didn't mock her. They studied her like she was a code line he hadn't debugged yet. He stepped forward and said something no one expected. Her question makes sense. The room went silent again. Ellie felt her cheeks flush. She wanted to disappear, but Noah had already pulled over a chair and gently nudged it toward her. "The system terminal's too high," he said softly. "You'll need to stand on this." No one moved. No one stopped her. Because for the first time, they had nothing left to try. Ellie climbed up, clutched her notebook to her chest, and stared at the blinking terminal, a maze of failed recovery attempts, corrupted admin shells, and authentication errors. She recognized the interface, not from school, from the inside of discarded towers in her neighbor's trash, from hours hunched in silence, from feeling her way through logic no one had ever explained. Her fingers hovered over the keys, not hesitant, calculating. She typed one command, then another, and suddenly, a prompt window appeared, one that hadn't shown up for anyone else. Gasps, clicking pens, silence. Noah leaned forward. "Did you just open the root override?" he whispered. Ellie didn't answer. She was already inside the shell, not guessing, not stumbling, remembering. This wasn't just knowledge, it was survival. The kind you develop alone without teachers, using broken radios and forgotten motherboards. In the back of the room, a man appeared behind the glass, his expression unreadable, arms crossed like stone. Richard Langston, CEO of Lynx Core Systems. He watched her with the stillness of a man who'd seen 1,000 disasters and never expected one to be unraveled by a child with scuffed sneakers and duct-taped glasses. He leaned toward his assistant. "Who is she?" "She's the janitor's daughter," the assistant stammered. "Angela Moore. Night shift. That's her kid." Langston's eyes narrowed. "Run background." "But sir, now..." Back at the terminal, Ellie kept typing. Commands flickered, access opened, and then she froze. Because what she saw wasn't random, it wasn't chaotic. It was crafted like a signature inside the wires, and that signature felt familiar. Her heart skipped. It was the same structure she'd seen years ago in a broken piece of code from a hacker forum. She had copied it into her notebook, obsessed over it. It was like hers. Whoever had written this virus was someone like Ellie, and that terrified her more than any shutdown. Do you believe a child could outsmart elite engineers in real life, yes or no? Ellie pressed deeper into the command line jungle, her small fingers fluttering over the keys so fast Noah had to lean in just to confirm she was still touching them. The entire West Wing operations room, once a hum of polished confidence, had devolved into an anxious semicircle behind her, everyone instinctively holding their breath. On the overhead monitors, a red cascade of access denied messages slowed, staggered, then stilled, as if the virus itself were pausing to watch what the girl might do next. Richard Langston stayed behind the glass jaw set. 30 stories up, he could have sent a SWAT-caliber crisis team. Lynx Core owned 3 on retainer, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the memory he couldn't shake a dirt courtyard in Texas, and a girl rebuilding a rusted radio like her life depended on it. Back then, he'd turned away. Progress didn't wait for orphanage miracles. Now the miracle was sitting in his lobby wearing secondhand sneakers and rewriting a fate he'd spent billions trying to secure. Ellie exhaled hard, as though surfacing from deep water. "There's more than one lock," she murmured, voice thin but certain. "Whoever wrote this expected you to quit after you patched the first layer." She tapped a cluster of commands, paused, then added almost to herself, "They're counting cycles in 4s. Mrs. Penrose, the silver-haired security architect, blinked. "Cycles of 4. Ellie nodded without looking up. "The exploit rebases every 4th system heartbeat. That's why your hot spare backups kept mirroring the corruption. Every rollback landed on a poison timestamp." Mr. Griffin's usual sarcasm evaporated into a whisper. "How did we miss that?" Noah shot him a look. "Don't answer. Just learn." Ellie copied a checksum string to her notebook, habit, not necessity, when the terminal pulsed and a line of text scrolled across the black screen. "Hello, stranger." 3 words white on midnight. The temperature in the room seemed to drop a degree. Ellie's pencil froze midair. A new prompt blinked. "You're not supposed to be here." Ellie's pulse hammered in her ears. She wasn't just fighting leftover malware. She had the live author on the other end of the wire watching her keystrokes in real time. Richard snapped to his assistant. "Cut external traffic on this subnet now." Daniel Rivers fumbled with a tablet. "Sir, the attacker tunneled inside our physical fabric. Pulling the plug could wipe half the production nodes." Richard's knuckles whitened on the doorframe, but he held back. Ellie had to finish the dance on her terms. She typed 3 words. "Why 4 heartbeats?" A pause, 1, 2, 3, 4. Cursor blinks, and the screen answered. "Some of us count the silence." Ellie swallowed. The phrase felt carved out of her childhood, those long nights sitting beside Tyler, scavenging electricity from half-dead power strips, while her mother scrubbed executive restrooms. listening to buzzing wires, learning that broken things still sang if you pressed your ear close enough. She reset her shoulders. "They're baiting me," she whispered. Noah bent lower. "Then don't take the bait. Map their trace, sever it." Ellie bit her lip. "If I kick them out, they'll wipe everything. But if I keep them talking, you can triangulate their location." Mrs. Penrose finished, sudden hope lifting her tone. Ellie nodded once. "But we need a live sandbox, isolated hardware, heaviest throttling we've got, and a decoy environment that looks identical to prod." Mr. Griffin blinked at Noah as if seeking permission to obey an 8-year-old. Noah rolled up his sleeves. "Move the dev cluster to Vault 3 and Ghost Prod's header values. I'll handle network segmentation." For the first time since the lights went out, the room moved with purpose. Engineers scattered cables, Snake servers groaned awake. Ellie stayed planted, fingers drumming, as she lured the intruder deeper into the fabricated clone. "You're quiet, little one another," message teased. Ellie typed back, "Quiet makes room for thunder." Richard's eyes flickered with something close to pride. He tapped a control on the wall, silently authorizing every resource request, flooding in licenses, compute cycles, even physical access overrides. If his board questioned the expense tomorrow, he'd face them. Tonight belonged to the girl. Minutes stretched like hours. Ellie's trap took shape: mirrored directory, trees, dummy API keys, synthetic customer data. Each time the attacker probed Noah's counters, redirected them further from the real core until all hostile traffic lived in the sandbox, an empty stage with painted scenery. The terminal pinged. "Clever. But why are you helping them?" Ellie hesitated. Why indeed? LynxCorp didn't know her name yesterday. Yet here she was defending the machine that ignored her mother's paycheck, patching a fortress she'd never been invited inside. "Because if I don't, someone else like you might think we're all broken," she thought. But she didn't type that. She answered with code, a recursive loop that froze the adversary's session feed, then fired back a tracer route. In Vault 3, a map blossomed. Packets leaping from Cypress Valley to Chicago, hopping overseas to Frankfurt, bouncing to a leased node in rural Texas, and abruptly stopping inside an abandoned fiber hub 10 miles from Red Hollow Orphanage. Ellie's heart lurched. She double-checked. Same coordinates down to the gravel road. Richard inhaled sharply. "Show me that." His voice cracked on the last word. Noah projected the map onto a giant screen. Red Hollow lit up like a warning flare. Mrs. Penrose blinked at the CEO. "You know that place?" Richard's mouth worked, but no sound came out. "Finally, I grew up there." Silence rippled outward. Ellie looked back at the scrolling log. The attacker's console had gone still. Then slowly, new text appeared, no longer taunting, but personal. "I didn't choose destruction. It chose me when you didn't." Richard's complexion went ashen. Ellie realized whatever ghost she'd cornered wasn't random. It was tethered to the CEO's past, to a choice he'd abandoned. Daniel Rivers whispered, "Sir, is there someone you left behind?" Richard rubbed his eyes. "There was a girl, younger than me. She fixed radios better than any adult. I left before adoption age. She never did." "Name?" Mrs. Penrose asked gently. He shook his head, voice brittle. "Never knew it. We all called her Cricket because she hummed when she worked." Ellie shivered. The attacker's syntax, short lines, odd spacing felt like humming, turned into text. She typed carefully, "Cricket, a heartbeat. 2, 3, 4. Yes." Ellie closed her eyes. Another orphan with lightning in her veins, but unlike Ellie, Cricket was alone long enough to let the world sour. She'd watched Richard ascend Forbes covers, televised IPOs while she stayed in the shadows, learning how systems break when no one listens to the quiet ones. Noah whispered, "How do we end this without triggering her payload?" Ellie stared at the prompt. She thought of her mother kneeling over tile floors, of Tyler burning his fingers on a soldering iron, of Richard staring through glass too thick for empathy. She thought of what happens when pain finds no witness. She typed, "I see you now, nothing." Then too late, the sandbox resource meter spiked. Cricket had realized she'd been corralled and launched a thermal wipe overload the dummy drives until metal warped. It wouldn't touch production, but once they lost live contact, the trace would vanish. Ellie had maybe 90 seconds to do something that mattered. "Can you send her a message?" Richard asked. Ellie nodded slowly. She began streaming a data burst through the decoy channel, a compressed archive of everything she'd scribbled in her notebook. Schematics of improvised radio's code, snippets annotated in childlike shorthand photos. Noah snapped of her circuit trees, even a voice memo Tyler once recorded of Ellie laughing when a busted fan suddenly whirred back to life. She bundled it all, proof that genius could survive in silence without growing venomous, and she titled the archive, "Cricket's Song Zip." Transfer complete. The sandbox temp soared, then flatlined. Drives hissed. The session died. Vault 3 went dark. No alarms. No real systems harmed. Just quiet. Ellie slid off the chair, knees weak. Engineers exhaled in one ragged wave. Noah caught her elbow before she toppled. Mr. Griffin cleared his throat. "Prod environment stable. All nodes green." Mrs. Penrose smiled an honest, trembling smile, then rushed to restart customer services. Daniel Rivers leaned to Richard. "The board will want a statement by morning." Richard barely heard him. He was staring at Ellie with eyes glassy, haunted. He crouched until they were level. "If she's still out there, what you sent might be the first kindness she's seen in decades." Ellie shrugged shy under his gaze. "Sometimes you fix things by showing what they could have been." Richard's breath caught. He offered a hand but didn't force it. Ellie slipped her tiny palm into his. In that handshake, redwood boardrooms and orphanage gravel roads collapsed into a single fragile present. Noah watched, heart hammering. For the first time, the room felt warm. Outside, dawn spilled between the glass towers of Cypress Valley. Backup generators idled down. Elevator chimes sang like birds waking. The world would never know how close it came to digital extinction, nor that its savior now yawned, craving nothing more than pancakes and sleep. Ellie glanced at Noah. "Think Tyler's still flipping flapjacks?" Noah laughed, giddy relief. "If he's smart, he saved you the biggest one." They started toward the exit when Richard called after them, voice steady at last. "Ellie, I owe you more than thanks. Stay, build with us, on your terms." She turned, eyes bright. "Can I keep breaking things first?" He smiled a real smile. "As long as you promise to show us how to put them back together." She nodded once, decisive, then disappeared through security doors that finally opened for her without a single alarm. Before you scroll away, ask yourself this: if you discovered a hidden genius fixing your broken world, would you fight to keep her invisible or give her every tool to shine? Yes or no? What's your answer? The months that followed moved like a quiet tide, washing away every certainty LinksCore's executives once anchored to. Ellie Moore, now wearing a proper access badge clipped to the pocket of her still oversized hoodie, arrived each morning with her mother on the same city bus that smelled faintly of diesel and cinnamon buns. Angela no longer mopped marble floors. Richard Langston insisted she accept a facilities coordinator role, same building, daylight hours, better pay, though he had to convince her it wasn't charity but overdue recognition. Ellie's workspace grew from a single loner tower to a corner of the advanced systems lab, a glass bay filled with cables and broken gadgets she rescued from recycling bins. Engineers tiptoed around her sketches the way curators handle rare manuscripts, careful not to smudge the penciled hieroglyphs she spun into living circuits. One gray Friday, the boardroom buzzed with an anticipation Richard hadn't seen since their IPO. Ellie was scheduled to demo a prototype she called Silent Mesh, an ad hoc network that healed itself under attack by splitting into thousands of whispering shards. If it worked, Link's core would leap years ahead of every competitor. If it failed, investors might dismiss the child prodigy as a momentary halo effect. Richard paced behind the smoked glass wall, equal parts mentor and father figure, trying not to show how much his own future felt braided with hers. Ellie entered without theatrics, set her backpack on the polished oak table, and unfolded a tiny constellation of circuit boards soldered to matchbook-sized batteries. Tyler bounded in after her, carrying a paper grocery bag, their impromptu parts locker, and flashed a grin at the room's stunned faces. Ellie connected the final jumper. Wire looked at Richard once for silent permission, then flipped a single switch. Board members tilted their tablets in confusion. Every device's Wi-Fi indicator went blank for half a heartbeat, then relit stronger. The silent mesh had hijacked and repatched their network in real time, erasing its own footprint as soon as the tunnel established. A round of cautious applause rose. Mrs. Penrose logged onto a diagnostics console and whistled under her breath. 0 packet loss, 0 latency. Richard felt the tension glide out of his shoulders like a long exhale. The prodigy was no publicity trick. She was the cornerstone of Link's Core's second act. Yet Ellie's eyes drifted toward the streaming log window, hovering above the conference table. A single line of cobalt text scrolled across. Still counting the silence, little sister. Ellie's heart leapt. Cricket, her phantom counterpart, was alive, watching. Only Richard and Ellie recognized the phrase. He met her gaze and knew time to close the oldest loop. That evening, they drove west past Cypress Valley into the scrub of ranch country, where fiber maps ended in redacted blanks. Tyler navigated from the back seat with a dog-eared atlas, while Angela sat in front twisting her hands, unsure why they chased a ghost who nearly burned the company to ash. The road narrowed to gravel, then to dirt. A gutted comm hut squatted by a dry creek. Its busted satellite dish wore bullet holes like freckles. Ellie stepped out first. "She's routing through here," she said, placing a palm on the cracked stucco wall as if listening for a pulse. Richard followed, flashlight sweeping shards of old motherboards scattered like green confetti. A battery-powered monitor on the floor flickered to life without warning. Lines of code scrolled, then resolved into a grainy webcam feed. A woman in her early 30s, hair pulled back, face illuminated by the pale glow of someplace equally improvised. She looked at Richard with a fragile steadiness that said she'd practiced this confrontation in her mind for years. "You left," Cricket whispered through the tinny speaker. "No letter. No promise." Richard's voice frayed. "I was 16 and terrified. That's not an excuse, it's just the truth I ran from." Ellie knelt, placing her prototype beside the monitor. "You wrote something beautiful," she said, "then wired it for revenge. I rewired it for trust. We can share it if you want." Cricket's eyes softened, not entirely believing, but curious. Angela laid a gentle hand on Ellie's shoulder, proud and trembling. Tyler, wide-eyed, raised a screwdriver like a salute across continents. Richard took a slow breath. "Come back with us. Join the lab you should have had from the start. We'll file no charges, demand no confession. Just build." The feed stuttered. A tear ran down Cricket's cheek. She wiped it angrily, as though emotions were the only code she hadn't mastered. "I don't need your mercy," she said, but her tone lacked venom. "I need proof this world has room for people who count the silence." Ellie lifted silent mesh wires, glinting like tiny rivers. "Then help us widen the room." Cricket didn't answer right away. The screen blinked once, twice, and the connection severed. For a hollow second, Ellie feared refusal. Then her backpack vibrated. A new file had appeared on her tablet. Cricket's song response.zip. Richard exhaled. Tyler whooped. Angela started to cry. Ellie simply smiled, a small, fierce curve that seemed to light the failing hut from within. Whatever came next, the conversation had begun, And sometimes beginning is enough to rewrite futures. Weeks later, Lynx Corps unveiled Project Quiet Star, a joint venture led by three improbable engineers, Ellie Noah, and a remote contributor known in the press only as CS. Investors called it disruptive. Richard called it redemption. Angela called it the best reason she'd ever had to ride the morning bus in daylight instead of darkness. And on opening day, Ellie pinned her original notebook page, the one marked with 4 heartbeat cycles, to the lab's corkboard, so every newcomer would see the message in faded pencil. Quiet makes room for thunder. Now we turn to you. Did Ellie's journey inspire you to believe that hidden brilliance can change even the coldest systems? Type the number 100 in the comments if this story moved you. Tell us which country you're watching from, and if you feel others should hear Ellie's thunder, share this video with a friend who never got the spotlight they deserved.